Okay, shaky little camera there. Radical Jack here. Day 3. The house is a bit chilly, so I'm like, whew. But just arrived home. I have my daughter with me this weekend, who's been a star. She climbed up Ishnook yesterday, no problem. She's the year of the rat. I'm year of the dog. The rat beat the dog to the top. So it's pure joy. And we got up for Ishnook this morning, no problem. And yeah, feeling really dizzy at times. Yesterday was tough. It was really tough. Like 2 days no food, just water. And I was quite queasy and faint like and then the odd moment of oh wow, yeah, I'm in. I know this terrain, I know what's coming, and that's the hardest thing for somebody who's never done anything like this before, even to fast for a day. I remember back in the early days, time of Sahaja Yoga, following a woman called Sri Mataji, who gives realizations to people. It was quite interesting. In Italy, I hooked up with a bunch of people there who were Sahaja yogis, and I had previous experiences of breath control and the odd day fasting, even just one day fasting in those days back in the late 90s maybe. Phenomenal. Like felt so centered. Like felt like it was just absolutely connected, to the universe. Powerful experiences. This one's different. I'm doing this for lots of different reasons. Like I explained before. But for me personally, it's clearing out of the out with the old, in with the new beginnings, marking that time. Think it's seasonally, in relation to everything has its season, and so there's that, and there's the elimination of toxins. So I'm not one for going to the doctors. If I've got a lump or I've got this or I've got that, it's like I'm scared of MRI scans and being radiated by these kinds of things, like X-ray, whatever. So I'm very much intuitive in the sense, and God bless those people who end up in that situation, and a lot of people I feel leave the planet because they believe there's no way out, because that's what the doctor says. There's enough people out there proving that even after the radiation, the chemotherapy, and all the things that were available in modern medicine, there was nothing left. They said, look, you've got 3 months to live, that's it. There's nothing we can do, we've tried everything. These people have gone on to do fasts, major juice fasts, and worked with all sorts of different medicines, alternative medicines and holistic medicine, etc. And now still living today. So, it's possible, So yeah, I'm here for the prevention and the cure of anything that's potentially here at this time of my life. I've noticed the usual changes, that they're to be expected, like heading for 50. Eyesight starts to deteriorate and stuff like that. But I know there's enough things out there that even guys like with goggles, who've started exercising their eyes and have lost the glasses, they've always needed glasses. So the mind plays a big part in what we believe. If you believe you're the village idiot, then you will be the village idiot. And a lot of that's down to projection, the way you look, etc. There's so many ways to come at this, but belief plays a big part in it. And it's not believing in someone else necessarily or something or something like, but believing changing the program and believing in something else that has been proven and is possible. Believing in yourself more than anything else. And even coming to knowing the truth. Which is another thing, another step. I believe belief is a stepping stone towards knowing. So hopefully one day we'll end up in that situation where it's old hat. This is how we do things. and in alternative ways. And it's not to say that modern medicine doesn't have a a relevance. Of course, I think if we could marry the two, it seems to me that that's what it's all about. Bringing those two extremes together. Two dual worlds of what's contemporary and traditional, etc. So and that this brings me to a place where I remember one of my first experiences. Oh, big shout out to Gemma McGowan, who I met this morning with my daughter. She was trying to make it up, and she did, and beautiful the fact that she was there, because I was struggling, and just in that moment she said, oh, I've got an exercise for you, and it's kind of like her own intuitive kind of breathing and pulling up the energy from the earth, and you could say qigong, Wim Hof breathing. Obviously he's into yoga, so he's got that from there, and it reminded me of the Soham, Soham. It's like, so you're doing that for like 10, 15, 20 minutes. Now, I had an experience back in the days when I was a little tearaway. Quite a funny story, where I had found a driver's license on the street, and it was obviously not belonged to me. I didn't even have a full driver's license myself. I was still quite young, 19, 20, and I basically, I had this situation where I wanted to rent out a camera from Radio Rentals. And back in those days, if you got a driver's license, you had identification, and you could get out the door without a deposit. Then you had a 300, 400, 500 pounds piece of machinery that you would just sell to somebody. That's the kind of trickery and fraudulent kind of playing with the system kind of thing that I did back in those days. That was just it. You were trying to be clever and whatever. That's the scene I was in. So I bring the license in, and I have a couple of guarantors ready if they need to ring somebody, and they're all on the ready. And I go into Radio Rentals, I pick out the camera, and it's like, wow, boom, and it looks like I'm getting away without a deposit, score even more money at the end. And basically I'm trying to rent this camcorder out, and suddenly I kind of, I just felt like, oh, maybe one of the guarantors, like, I need them kind of a little bit more ready, and I wasn't sure if they'd got my message or something like that. Whatever happened anyway, I decided to kind of leave the shop for that moment. I said, I've got to get something from the van. So I did that, and made a quick phone call, and couldn't get through to this person, and then came back to the shop. Everything's looking as if it's all going down, and I'm getting the camcorder, and next thing anyway, it was like almost like 8 or 9, 10 CID officers, yeah. I mean, just rushed the place. It was it was like an armed robbery or something, it was like as if it was serious crime, But in all fairness, it was like, why so many? Geez, 1 or 2 would have done it the most. Anyway, I was caught, bang to rights. The driver's license had been reported stolen or missing, and so that was registered. So that could show you how daft I was at times in doing things. And maybe they had figured it out for themselves in that moment. That I wasn't right or something. The signature or something like that. But anyway, worse again, for me, it was a stupid thing in the sense that by the time I walked around the corner to the police station, I was like, oh my God, I couldn't have picked a better Radio Rentals, so close to the police station, It was literally around the corner, yeah. So that's why there were so many CID officers. Anyway, like in those days, I was in and out like a jackhammer. I did many tours to prison. I had 7 months on remand, 6 months on remand, 6 months on remand. I had open prison, 3 months, 6 weeks, 3 weeks, few days. I did a total of 2.5 years within 3.5 years. That was me. That was my life. And so I'd been in and out. And I was kind of like already thinking, well, okay, I'm getting comfortable in the cell, thinking about all the incriminating evidence and things that are at home, And I'm thinking, oh, I'm done for it, you know. So that's usually the call. You end up in the cell, then they take you out, interviewed, then they, or first they take you to your home to check to see what kind of place you're living in, and what other things might be there. So we went through that process first. I believe I can't really remember exactly which process was first, but I'm lying in the cell, and I'm already thinking to myself, "Oh my God, here I go. There's too many things in the house. I'm gonna be like, I'm in trouble. I'm going down." I never, ever, ever got bail because I jumped bail the very first time. So that was the thing for me. No bail. It was automatic. I was like, that was just the way it was. You know, I was always remanded in custody because I jumped bail for that very first time. So in this moment, anyway, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm in the cell. I've already accepted that I'm just heading down again. I'm off to prison. Here you go. So I'd been reading a book, and I just read the first few pages of, we'll say, Hatha Yoga. And so it's this kind of so ham, so ham. It becomes the same thing, yeah? And you're supposed to do it for about 10, 15 minutes, you know? I think I did it for a half an hour. Well, I heard the keys in the door, and they came in and said, well, it's time for your interview, you know? And I remember getting up off the where I'd been lying down, and immediately I felt like 10 foot tall. I had to put my head down above the ledge of the door, you know, just because and I've never felt so high and so naturally together and at peace and in joy and just like absolute, like in touch with the universe, you know. So I sat down to this interview, and it was really interesting because there's a you know, a black guy there, you know, and he's really small, you know. At that time, like, you had to be above 6 foot to get to, you know, so things had changed, you know. And there's two detectives there, and there's a lot of weird things about the whole thing. And they said to me, "See that hole in the wall over there?" They go, well, we're going to film this because we're thinking about introducing these into the police stations around the country, and this is the very first interview and first test run, you know." And I was just like, cool, man, you know, I'm going to get like, you know, I'm being videoed now instead of like normal tape deck thing, you know. And it was all against police brutality and you know, blah, 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 blah. So it was, you know, it might be a new thing that was introduced nationwide or whatever. So, you know, so there'd be no police brutality or whatever, you know. But that's how it was explained to me, and I was just like, wow, no problem. Anyway, I was so together. These guys were looking at me. I was talking about things that I didn't even know where it was coming from. I was so centered, and they just looked at me going, why are you here? You shouldn't really be here. It's so obvious, right, that, you know, I had them in a way that basically butter would melt in my mouth, and I was just this philosopher of some sorts that just like, you know, there was just no way. It was just obviously I made a mistake, because that was the thing that my excuse was, that, hey, I found a license and I wanted to get a camcorder to mess around and have a bit of fun, you know. And there's the irony of it, right? Next thing, I'm having a bit of fun. I've got a camera on me in this interview, and anyway, cut the long story short, next thing, we left that interview. They were like my pals, you know. They couldn't, like, I had such a spiritual slant on everything, and it was amazing. They were all looking at each other going, what the hell is this guy, you know? So next thing, we go out to the sergeant, who is the guy, you get your prints taken, and then your prints have to come back, and then they find out how much previous you've got, and in that is usually how you're judged, and whether you might abscond because you got so much previous or whatever. So, because, you know, in those situations, you can walk out the door with a caution. And I very nearly walked out at the door with the caution because of the way the guys had received me and the way things were. But it didn't happen because obviously he wasn't in the room at the time, and he was just like, I don't know, I don't think so. I think we'll, you know. But they still let me out, and that was one of the first times that I got out, you know. And also, when I went to court, I ended up getting bail as well, because it was amazing. Obviously, my previous had come back, and you know, having got a caution would have been the best thing, and that would have been the end of it, you know. But and anyway, they had to give me a copy of the video, and it was classic for a while, showing all my friends, and they were like, where are you getting this shit from, you know? And it was simple. That was my first experience of the very first phrase in that book, Hatha Yoga. It was like, he who controls breath controls life itself. And it was very much like that. It was an amazing experience. So thanks to Gemma this morning for